Welcome to episode 2 of my podcast, What If There's a Better Way? I'm Leah. In this episode, I speak with Janet Raftis. She's an intuitive healer, and her ability to hold space for healing is truly amazing. So, this episode is an introduction to the non-physical world. I want to thank Janet again for coming on, and enjoy the show. Welcome, Janet.
Hi. Good to be here.
Good to have you on. So, can you introduce yourself and tell the audience a little bit about what you do and who you are?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am Janet Raftis, quantum creatrix, divine feminine channel, and I basically work with source energy to support my clients in activating the remembrance of who they truly are, healing in that process, and rediscovering the source of their power.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, I think so.
I think so too. So, your world is obviously not the material one, right?
I live here in the material world, and I do connect with it. But yes, I work a lot in the etheric realm as well.
Which is very, not many people nowadays even consider it real, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So just to get warm the people up listening. So maybe you can explain a little bit more about your worldview and some things that everybody can observe that are connected to this and how the whole thing works.
There have been giant books written on all this, but
yeah. I started with the easiest question, right? just a small one.
Exactly. But I'll try to give you all a little nutshell. So everything is energy. Everything is energy. So the air around us is energy. All of the things in the material world are energy. So, for example, this stone is also energy, even though it looks very solid and feels very solid to us, or even though we feel very solid to us, we are actually made up of moving particles, right? And photons, and we're actually less solid than we appear to be. And so within this energy always moving, it is it responds to intention. And there have been lots of experiments done on this. And if it's something that you want the science of it, which I needed, by the way, at the beginning of my journey, I needed the science to validate what was happening to me. And there are a couple books that I highly recommend. They're both written to the layperson, so they're easy to follow and understand. One is The Holographic Universe by Michael Talbot. I read that at the very beginning of my spiritual awakening and was like, oh my God, science validates all of these psychic experiences I've been having my whole life. So I needed that, like I said. And then there's another one called The Divine Matrix by Gregg Braden. Gregg Braden used to be a rocket scientist. He became a metaphysicist. And his books are phenomenal as well for explaining all of this. But energy responds to intention. So if we think a thing or feel a thing and push that feeling or that thought into the field, then the energy shifts and changes. And so through this, we can create healing. We can facilitate healing, which is what happens in hands-on healing and other modalities like that, which is part of the world that I live in. Now, in addition to that, anything that's ever happened in the course of ever in the infinite universe is all energetically recorded. It all leaves like a timestamp or an energetic signature with it. And so in the intuitive level, you can pick up on and read all of this in the field, this field of source potential. And some people call it God, some people call it goddess, source, the matrix, the field, the universe. All of these imprints can be read in the field. They can be Some people see them. Some people have a knowingness of them. Some people feel them. There are different ways, right? There are different psychic senses to help you pick up on this. And a lot of people believe that in order to be psychic, you have to see something, but that's not actually true. There are many psychic senses, and all of us have them, all of us. And so probably any of you, even if you don't really believe in this, have had the experiences of having a hunch, or just knowing who was on the other end of the phone call, or feeling like you were going to run into someone and you did, or having a sense that something bad was going to happen or something good was going to happen. These are all things that happen to us on the regular, but because our society has really suppressed this part of our magic, our innate magic, we have kind of pushed them down. We've chalked them up to imagination. We were told when we were little, it's just your imagination. So we started to believe that, and we started to discount these feelings that we had. But most of us have had them. I would say all of us have had them, because we're all born open like this, some more than others, but we are all born like this, and we can all access it. We can all be trained to do it. Trained so many people to connect into their psychic senses, because really it is dropping the mind out of what your preconceived notions are. For example, to go back to the stone, we've been told this is a stone, and so we identify it as a stone, and it's a stone, and that's that. It becomes what we feel is sort of immovable, it's just this object that is, and it can't be anything else. But there is an entire energetic field to this stone, just like there's an entire energetic field to our bodies and everything else that is of the earth. And so, for example, you probably have had the experience of going into a room and being or being with someone and being like, man, that person, I just didn't like their vibes. Or, I love being around that person. They've got great vibes, great energy. Well, that energy is their energy. It's their energy. It's their energy field. And that's a psychic impression that you're having. You are tapped in on the intuitive level to that person's energy, and it either feels good to you or bad to you or sticky to you or whatever it feels. But you're having a psychic experience. You are reading that person's field, and in that person's field is all the stuff that's ever happened to that person, as I mentioned earlier, from this lifetime and other lifetimes. And it's all there. And when you train your psychic senses, when you drop out of your preconceived notions and you go into, initially it helps to be in a meditative state. Once you've opened them up, you can do it kind of any time and place that you want to. But initially, to go into that meditative state, to shut down your preconceived notions and to open up to the potential of connecting into that field and allowing yourself to receive the impressions of what is there. And when you receive the impressions of what is there, you start to find that those impressions are just as real as this rock. Did that explain it?
It makes sense to me.
Yes.
Right?
Because
the part about culture, or generally how we grew up, I think it's very, at least the Western world, Europe, the States, right? We are very materialistic. Religion is not something that's cherished.
Right.
Which would traditionally be a source of that faith or that spiritual or that where you put intentions out into the world more regularly, right?
Yeah.
So generally, people don't pray. Nowadays people meditate, but it's different.
Yeah, you mentioned that we're materialistic, and materialistic comes from matter. We are very matter focused, right? We have been taught that to see it is to believe it, and that you have to be able to touch it, you have to be able to taste it, right? We've been taught this, but what's really fascinating about it, and this is a story that is from Braden's book, The Divine Matrix, and it is a story. He took a group of people to China. I just love this story. He took a group of people to China I think it was China. It may have been somewhere else in Asia. It's been many years since I read the book. But they go up to this cave where this hermit has been living for a long time, decades. This hermit's been living up in the cave. Classic hermit story, right? Well, when they get there, what they notice, I think the hermit is dead at this point in time. But what they noticed in the cave, or what is there in the cave and why they went to the cave, is that there are handprints in the wall of the cave. It's a granite cave. And that hermit was up there really in this space of exploring transcendence, right? And what he learned is that what he ended up doing was that he could make a hand imprint in the granite, just like we would with clay, but he was doing it with granite, and he was able to do that because he knew that intention and belief were what would do it. And also that even though that granite looked solid, is matter, right? That it was more or was less solid than it appeared to be. And that's where our human brains can't handle the stuff.
Yeah,
you know, because we are like, yeah, right. We're like, I'm solid, right? Like, we're like, I can't put my finger through this. But really, we could if we believed we could. We've just been trained out of it. And so, and we are dense. Like, humans are dense and the earth is dense. When we come into this body, it is a dense experience. When we are in spirit form, and, you know, if you are somebody who communicates with angels, spirit guides, ascended masters, or people who have crossed over, then you know that they are in a not dense experience. As humans, we're in a dense experience, and so we resonate with density. But just because we resonate with density doesn't mean that's the only way things are.
Right. So, like, another example for that could be, we have certain eyes that can perceive certain light frequencies. But obviously there's the electromagnetic spectrum is very, very great. And another animal can see other frequencies, so their perception is different, right? And there is a part that can be trained in a way, which is like part of the consciousness that's just developing, and then there's just the more human part. Is that about right?
Yeah, so everything is frequency, and we have been trained in it as a human to see a certain bandwidth of frequency. So I'm just going to keep using the stone. It's right here. So when we were, you know, toddlers, babies, and we picked up this stone, you know, our parents said in whatever language, rock, right? They're like, that's a rock, Janet, that's a rock. They wanted me to learn the word rock. And rock, I was holding it in my hand. I could feel it. I could touch it. I could see it, right? So I'm like, we are now in babies. You may notice if you're around babies that babies are tracking. They're looking all over and they're seeing things that we're not seeing. I've heard so many stories of babies seeing relatives who had crossed over, like little ones who could communicate.
Yeah.
Or, you know, but when they were like 2, 3, seeing people who had crossed over and being able to tell the parents who that was, right? So, but we're trained in the material world. So it's like rock, water, you know, whatever. Like, it happens to be a bunch of rocks on my desk. So, you know, pen, pencil. And we learn to associate, we learn in that bandwidth, right? But beyond that bandwidth, there are, like you said, I mean, just an infinite amount of bandwidths, and different things reside in different bandwidths. So here we have like the material world and the human experience. And then we have like the crossed over loved ones bandwidth. And then we have spirit guide bandwidth. And then we have, you know, angel bandwidth and ascended master bandwidth, right? Like there's, and so many bandwidths we don't even know exist, because if we can't label them, we tend to not see them, right? Because as humans, again, with matter, we label, and label gives our world definition. So we have an awareness as humans about angels. They've been written about in all of the mystic traditions, all the religious traditions, angels. And we've been told that they look a certain way. And so even if you don't believe in angels, you know what an angel is. So that if you do have an experience with an angel, you're like, that's an angel. I mean, the first time I saw an angel, I didn't believe in angels at all. And I was doing a healing session. I had just started doing healing work. I was, in very early stages. And I read that book, The Holographic Universe, that I mentioned, and then synchronistically ran into a Reiki Master and was supposed to interview her for a newspaper I worked for in this small town in Costa Rica where I was living. And I was intrigued, and I had just read that book, and it had just explained all of these things about me, about seeing energy. My whole life I had seen energy and felt energy and had psychic experiences. So I was open to this Reiki experience and decided I would try it. So I learned it, and I was in the early stages of it. But, my Reiki master was like, angel this and angel that and Archangel Michael. And I was like, whatever, she's weird. But whatever, she can talk about whatever she wants. Her prerogative. I'm just here to see what this Reiki thing is about. And so I was doing a Reiki session, and I just out of nowhere felt this immense surge of heat where immediately I was sweating profusely, and I could feel, and I don't even know how to say it, I saw it, but it was a feeling seeing of this immensely large angel. And I knew it was Archangel Michael. I just knew it. And I was like, oh my God. And for me, and this may resonate with some of you, for me, I was really, I knew there was something else because I'd had all these weird experiences, but I didn't necessarily think it was God. The whole God concept for me didn't land ever. But then I started doing energy work, and I was like, okay, there's definitely something way bigger than me. And this thing that people call God is this thing, but I don't think it is the limitations of God. I think it's something bigger than that, than what we believe God is in our Christian Catholicism, what I had been taught anyway within those frameworks, right? And then, so I was like, okay, I'm buying it because I'm experiencing it. So the same thing happened with Archangel Michael, where I was not buying it. And then I experienced it, and I was like, okay. And then the third thing that happened, Leah, was that I was but fairies don't exist. Fairies are stupid. How could people believe in that stuff? I was not, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but I did not believe. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, fairies do exist. And not only do they exist, but they're all around me. And people will look at me. Some people who are highly sensitive will look at me and be like, oh, I see fairies all around you. And you can look at me kind of and see the fairy influence. But it was one of those things. And after that experience, I had a really, for me, profound realization that I was the only thing limiting my understanding of the universe.
That's profound.
Yeah, that I was the one that was boxing it in, right? When I took that away and was just I don't know what's out there. And it's a field of infinite potential. So, oh my God, what I understand is a tiny fraction of what is out there. And that changed everything. Once I allowed myself to open up and gave myself the permission to just be with what I experienced, the floodgates opened in a really good way.
That's immensely profound. Because people think they already know everything. Everybody assumes what they know is the end all be all. Right?
Yeah. Totally.
And fortunately and unfortunately, we live by that. And some people
right?
get better and worse results for it.
Yes. But it's really limiting, right? I mean, it really is. And I think that even that realization has impacted my humanness too. I'm much more open-minded than I used to be because I'm just like, I just don't know. I don't know. What I've really learned to do in this space is to tap into what feels resonant with me and what doesn't. And because of that, my, truth is a little more fluid. Now, there are some things that are true to me, right? Like true. And these are typically things about me, right? Mm-hmm. I work with goddess energy. I am in the process of like doing my part to deconstruct the patriarchy. Those things are like my truths, right? But within that, even I am constantly learning and constantly experiencing. And so my truths are going to fluctuate. And we've seen, I think a big thing that's come out of the pandemic that we've just come through is that everybody was very regimented in their beliefs. Like we became more polarized. We've always been polarized, I think, but we became more polarized than ever. And the powers that be wanted to create even more polarization within it. So that polarizing force, it was like everything became concrete. And I think what's really important for me, what happened during that was that because I was able to say, I don't know what is true. I have my personal feelings around certain things, but I'm open to exploring the full range of it. And then from the full range of what I'm able to get my hands on and read and listen to and feel for myself and my body, all of those things together led me to decision making that was right for me. That may not be right for somebody else, and that's fine, but was right for me. But and that's just one example. That's a recent example that I think is easy to kind of get to. It's like, I think when we become so rigid in our beliefs, we really limit our capacity. We limit our potential because it's a rigid pattern, and a rigid pattern boxes you in.
Yes. Like a more like simple example that I think about kind of shows the same dynamics would be like if two people are fighting, right? One person has their assumption of what this is about, their feelings, their thoughts, their history, their assumptions, and the other person has all their own. And as long as there is not a willingness to understand, but only like wanting to be right, to dominate, or to like kind of get on top of the other person, there's never going to be any kind of resolution of the conflict. It's only either going to be shut down or explode even more or some weird combination of it. So we need that openness to like be wrong. Maybe I don't know everything. Maybe.
Yes.
What if the name of my podcast? What if there's a better way? What if I don't know everything?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yes. And I think that's the question, right? Like when we assume that we know everything, we leave out the opportunity for growth.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I'm a Sagittarius sun born under the planet Jupiter, and Jupiter is all about expansion. So I have a predisposition towards that energy. Like I just love expand and learn and like, do this. Like, I'm like kind of like Star Trekky, like I'm going towards that like final frontier, I really do love that. And especially since I came to that realization of how limiting I was being. But even before that, I was trying to explore these things in different ways that were available to me in the earthly realm, just not the spiritual realm. And I think that, so I for me, this is an important part of life, and other people may feel differently, which is fine. But I think that my sense is that life is so much richer when we allow ourselves to learn and listen and explore and change and be open to change. Like, it's hard sometimes to be like, you know what? I did used to believe that, and now I don't. Like, it can be vulnerable to admit that maybe you were wrong. And so I think that's part of why a lot of us avoid it. But there's a freedom in that as well, of like, I'm seeing things that I never saw before, and I have a deeper understanding now. And what an amazing experience this is to evolve, right? It's like we resist change, and yet we're all about evolution. But if you resist change, you're not evolving to the extent that you could.
Yes. Yes. And there are so many like profound and expansive and like deep experiences that can be had when you like have the courage to explore more of yourself and the world, right?
Yes, absolutely. Because it's really, I mean, I'll use an analogy, you know, so I'm here in the United States, and I was born in a town called Manhattan Beach outside of Los Angeles. And if I had just stayed in Manhattan Beach my entire life and not gone anywhere else, right? I wouldn't have lived in South America. I wouldn't have lived in Central America. I wouldn't be living in Atlanta right now. I wouldn't have met my ex-husband and had my child. I wouldn't have met the friends that I have now. I would just be, I mean, sure, I would have friends there, and I would do the things that you can do there, but my experience would only be that particular place and those particular people, right? It's the same thing. If you have a belief that you're not willing to change, you're only inhabiting that small bit of intellectual geography.
Yes. I think it's hard to understand that if you haven't ever tried to go over it. Right?
Yeah, it is. Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how to convey that to our listeners and viewers.
Yeah. Well, you know, there are a lot of reasons why people resist change, and a lot of them have to do with trauma, unresolved trauma, and the need to feel safe, right? And so a rigid pattern is connected to this idea of, if I can just control my environment and my thoughts and what comes into my space, then I'll be okay, right? And that's a subconscious belief. It's a defense mechanism, safety mechanism, and it evolved for each person who has that as a result of their trauma. They come by it naturally. It's not something to be judged or ridiculed, right? Like, it's a part of life, and it probably kept them safe for when they were young. It was the thing that had to keep them safe. If they got in trouble for touching things, exploring things, you know, doing things outside of the way their mother or father wanted them to do it, they got in trouble for it. Well, they learned that if I just stay in my bedroom, I'll be safe.
Yeah.
Right? And it could be that there was even violence involved, so it could have felt like a life or death thing. So that becomes very, very ingrained. And there's a million different examples. That's just one. But that would be one thing that would create that patterning. And so it becomes a mental patterning as well of, I just stick with what I know, because what I know is safe. And even if what I know isn't safe, at least I know it, and I know in the way that it isn't safe, right? So I can manage it. So getting to this space of being able to open up and move beyond this type of patterning requires healing and addressing the unresolved trauma and those feelings of lack of safety. And when you can address that, then you can really embody yourself in a new way, and you can begin to explore in a new way. So I've always been adventurous. Again, going back to my Sagittarius sun sign, I grew up, my father worked for the airline. We traveled a lot. I continued to travel as a young adult, backpacked across Europe many times, one time by myself, backpacked through South America by myself, like have traveled all of the Americas, I've done a lot of traveling. But there was a difference in the travel I did before I resolved my trauma and the travel I did after I resolved my trauma.
Yes.
So there is, even though I had this compulsion within me to travel and I love it, I would hug the sidelines. You know what I mean? I would like play it safe. I would play it safe.
Okay.
Yeah, I had a lot of fear. I did it because I felt called to do it, but I had a lot of fear in it. And now I can, and I also, you know, that I'm talking about physical travel there, but I also was not willing at that time to, unless I was intoxicated, which I think was a big part of my past addiction issues, which are all trauma related, sensitivity related, you know, and spiritual seeking related. You know, I had a lack of willingness to explore beyond this, what my immediate experience was in the spiritual realms. And so now that I've done a lot of healing work, I'm much more naturally adventurous. Before, I wanted to be adventurous and I did things that were adventurous, but I wasn't necessarily feeling the true adventurousness within me, if that makes sense. And now I am truly adventurous. I am truly adventurous when I travel. I am truly adventurous when I meditate. I am truly adventurous when I'm facilitating a healing session. I am truly adventurous when I'm connecting to spirit. I carry a very authentic and healed sense of adventure within me that is embodied and trusting.
Yeah. There's this like a thing of safe enough to move forward, right? Kind of that
totally.
You build up to, and then at some point you feel it, and then, you know, it's just like, wow, the gates open.
Yes. The gates open. And because you feel safe in your body, because you've done that healing work and you feel safe in your body, you feel safe to experience new things. And if you feel safe to experience new things, you feel safe to experience change. And if you experience safe to feel change, you experience enough safety to change your mind and explore and expand and do things differently.
Yes. Yes. Open for adventure. So there is also past lives, right? In your experience. I too, but you know, it's you talking. So how are they connected, and how does that feed into trauma and like who you are as a person now, and you know, how the whole thing.
Yeah. Again, book. And for those of you who like to read, Weiss is a great resource for past lives. But let's say it's such a good book. I mean, he's written a bunch, but Many Lives, Many Masters is like, it's so good.
Oh, I loved it. I loved it. It's great. It's just goes in, it's like, great book.
Yeah.
Anyway.
and he was a skeptic, right? I mean, he was like, what just happened? You know? So, and for those of you who haven't read it, he is a psychologist who was treating a woman who had extreme anxiety and some obsessive disorders, stuff like that. And he was treating her with using hypnotherapy, and accidentally went into a past life with this woman. And they did many, many past life therapy sessions, and so much wisdom came through. And he's got, through his book, some crazy stories. He's got one book that's about two people who he was treating separately, who shared the same past life with him. And he was like, oh my God, what do I do? Do I introduce these people? And he's like, no, I can't interfere. That's like a breach of like all my ethical stuff. They ended up meeting on an airplane or something crazy. And he was like, witness to all of that. So, I mean, you read stuff, I have goosebumps. I mean, you read stuff like that and you're like, this is real. There's also a story of a kid who was in the United States here within the last 20, 25 years. You can find it on YouTube. I can't remember his name, but if you look up past life kid Japanese pilot, or sorry. Past life fighter pilot, World War II or something like that, you'll find him. And his story is crazy. Okay, yeah, it is so good. Oh my God, you will cry. I mean, he had past life recollections where they actually were able to find people still living that he knew in his past life. He was able to give details about their lives that nobody knew. He found his sister from his past life and told her things that like nobody else knew. I mean, crazy. If you are a skeptic, watch that. So anyway, but we call them past lives because they seem to be past lives. We see ourselves in past historical context. Mm-hmm. Like this kid saw himself as a World War II fighter pilot. That was his experience. And people see themselves in the 1800s or the, in 850 BCE. So we say it's a past life, but my sense of it more is that, and one of my teachers called it this, resonant life. Mm-hmm. And that put a really great word on what I was feeling, because to me, it's more like everything's happening at the same time in this field of infinite potential. But our human minds need timelines to help us make sense of things. And so we have the human timeline, and it unfolds minute by minute by minute. That goes on to year by year, decade by decade, century by century, et cetera. So we tend to perceive them as past lives, but you can also, be hypnotized and experience a future life. You can also experience parallel lives. Your soul can be split, experiencing many lives at the same time. There are so many possibilities here, and really they're all kind of happening at the same time, which is why, we're going to talk a little bit about distance healing here too. Why you can't do distance healing and past life healing and future life healing and parallel life healing is because the energy is all alive in the present moment. Even if it is, quote unquote, past, the energy is alive in the present moment. And so you can actually change and heal a past life for somebody at a distance, somebody who's in another country, all the way across the world, is because you can access the energy right here, right now. Always, you can access the energy right here, right now. So me doing a healing session on somebody with my hands touching them is no different to me than me doing a healing session with somebody in Italy. It's because the energy is right here, right now. All you have to do is say, here, my intention is that Leah's energy is here with me right now. And it is, right?
Yes.
And I can access that. And then I can do things for healing. I can facilitate healing that will have an impact on the person across the world. And I know this is, if you have never experienced this, it is hard to wrap your head around. But yes, I have experienced it thousands of times, and it is real because I have worked with people who have been had this thing that hurt, or anxiety, or they couldn't do this, or they couldn't do that, or whatever it was. And we had a healing session or 2 or 3 or whatever, and it was gone. Right? So these things, you can change it. Now, past life is the same thing. The past life in the realm of energy, the past life is happening right here, right now. Now, in the history books, it happened 200 years ago or whatever. But in the realm of energy, it is happening right here, right now. So our soul, my belief is that our soul has a personal, sort of like in a lifetime, right? We have each person will have certain themes that they explore in a lifetime. Well, the soul kind of explores different themes over the course of its evolution as well. And it wants to experience certain things, and it wants to do certain things, and it wants to do it with certain people who are in its soul family. And, so there's all this stuff going on in the spiritual realm the soul and the soul energy and the oversoul of the individual or the group of individuals. And that is going to be made manifest in certain ways in form, in incarnated form, so that that soul can evolve in the way that it wants to evolve. And so sometimes something from one lifetime or many things from a lifetime will be left unresolved. And if it's left unresolved, it can have an impact on your current lifetime, like we see in the story Brian Weiss shared in Many Lives, Many Masters. Her anxieties and the things that were happening to her were a result of unresolved issues in the past life that had been triggered in this lifetime. So you can do healing on the past life, right? Brian Weiss did it through hypnotherapy. I've done it through energy work. There are other types of energy healing modalities out there, and I'm sure other things too that will do the same thing. Some people have had success even just through their own personal meditation. So, I just want to say, like, this can happen. Is you just access the energy of that past lifetime to do the healing work, to clear the trauma in this lifetime. And one of the things that happens too is that you might have a pattern of being with another person that may be over many lifetimes. Like, I see personal dynamics play out in couples, in parent-child relationships that are the result of many, many lifetimes. And if sometimes you can go back to a past lifetime, not all the time, because sometimes it can be resolved more easily in the past lifetime and sometimes in the current lifetime. If it's resolved in either place, it's going to create change. Like, it affects each other in both ways. Sometimes just the present life is enough. Sometimes, for whatever reason, that person needs to experience the past life and have an understanding of it for it to be resolved. There's no right or wrong way. There's no better way. There's just better for some people ways, right? Whatever works for that person. So you can go back, you can do a past life healing, and the issues in this lifetime will resolve just like that, like magic. I mean, it's like this is the stuff of miracles. Miracles aren't as rare as we've been led to believe. I mean, Jesus isn't the only one that can perform miracles. Every single one of us can perform miracles, can receive miracles, and that is because miracles happen in the energetic realm, in a shift of perception that allows for a shift in energy, that allows for something significant to change.
Yes. I think the concept of having a miracle happen for some people can be like too far out, right? So it doesn't have to be that like, right. My life is so mediocre, I'm unsatisfied, lots of trauma, who knows? Like, they're just not in a great place. So they hear, maybe somebody comes across it to this and hears it, oh my God, miracles are possible. But I don't experience it in my life, right? So It feels like a lie. But the thing is, you don't have to have like the biggest miracle happening to you tomorrow. Maybe you can just make a little improvement.
Yeah.
Just work on that
totally
one little thing. And then
I think
that will become your new base, and then another little thing. And again. And again.
Totally. Yeah. Totally. I think a lot of it's that we've been dulled to the possibility of magic, right? Like, magic is external to us. Like, Jesus performed miracles, and the miracles we hear from Jesus are these giant miracles. So we're like, well, I can't raise the dead, right? Like, how am I going to do that? But miracles, I mean, it's like, really, I love what you said, because for me, miracles have been things that I didn't think would ever change. But after doing healing work, it changed. And to me, it felt like a miracle. And sometimes that miracle has happened in an instant, and sometimes it's happened over time, right? Like, when I think back to where I was 10 or 12 years ago, how hard I was struggling as a single mom, how broke I was all the time, how I was constantly like playing beat the bank to pay my bills, like how depressed I was, how hard life was, to now, a miracle happened, Leah. A miracle happened. I did not ever think that this would be me, and that really speaks to your point of sometimes we just don't notice the miracles, or we don't call them miracles. And there are other miracles too. I mean, we can see miracles all around us. Signs from spirit are like little, mini miracles, and things that, like, and another example from my life I'll give you is that one time when I was doing a lot of abundance work because of the story I just told you, and I had been doing a lot of healing and, listening to Abraham Hicks and like really in it. And I had done a session for a client, and he emailed me and he was like, "Do you mind if I send you a tip? I want to give you something." And I was like, "No, that's cool." I was expecting like, I don't know, $20 or something, right? And a few days later, and at the same time, I was reading a book called E Cubed by Pam Grout. She's got an E squared and then an E cubed. And I'd read just one chapter from E cubed, and it was this chapter that was talking, and it's about how to play with the field. It's how to play with, and so if you are interested in playing with the energy field, her books are great. They're super fun. And it was an exercise where every time you find a penny, you celebrate the penny. Now, most people are like, yeah, whatever, right? And I was like, I'll give it a try. I mean, I was desperate. So I was like doing that. And I had been doing that for a couple days when I got the email from that person. And I was like, I would find a penny and be like, yes, penny, I found a penny, and celebrate it. And I got a check in the mail from him, and it was for $5,000.
Wow.
That's a miracle. Where did that come from? Like,
incredible.
Now people will say a miracle is if 5,000 just pops out of the thin air, right? Like, oh, it's not a miracle because they will explain that away. That's not a miracle because blah, 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 blah. But if I had just been walking along and I had looked down and all of a sudden there were $5,000 sitting on the grass right in front of me, everybody would say that was a miracle. Well, it's the same thing. $5,000 virtually came out of nowhere for me.
And especially considering your situation at the moment. It was big money,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah, it was huge money.
Wow.
And it's fun that was such a fun thing for me to do. Like, all I did was celebrate pennies for a couple of days. I got $5,000. So experiment, y'all. And it taught me to. It taught me the power of celebration.
And let us know if something happens like that.
Yeah, seriously, if you do it, let us know what happens. Her books are super fun, but it really did. It taught me the power of celebration. Like, celebration is such a powerful energy, and it's such a powerful intention to put into the field, because when you celebrate something, you're saying to spirit, I love this. I love this. Give me more of it. Right? So spirit's like, well, I'm going to give you however many pennies are in $5,000 because you really love pennies. And we'll
But so we can also talk more about the energetics of money and prosperity if you want. Because
sure.
Principles work there, right?
Yes, exactly. So, whatever you put your attention on and your intention in is what you're going to get. Now, what happens is that we manifest by default a lot. And our default setting is usually, for most of us, it's towards the lack side. I don't have enough money to pay my bills. I don't have enough money to get groceries. Groceries are so expensive. How am I going to afford them? Oh my God, gas prices are going up. What am I going to do? Right? So we're constantly, even if we're saying, I want more money, we are believing something completely different. We're believing that there's not enough. And so our default manifesting muscle is set to scarcity. And that was my story. I just really was always scraping by. Like, I have the story that there was always just enough. And even for a long while after I started earning more money, I was earning more money because I was bringing in more abundance, but I was still always at just enoughness. So that was something I definitely had to work on and heal. And that, and so whatever your operating belief is, and it comes from your childhood, it could come from past lives. A lot of people in past lives have taken vows of poverty for religious beliefs. They have, yes. Oh my God. And vows are like, I mean, they show up in the field like a curse, because you're like, I will not accept money. Money is bad. Money is evil. I will live in poverty. And that can do a doozy on you. So, yeah, right. I know. So if you're one of those people that's like, God, like, I'm doing so much work and I'm listening to Abraham Hicks and I'm doing all this stuff and I'm really trying to, you want to look at trauma first and foremost, and you want to look at past lives. And if there's a past life where you did take a vow of poverty, or where maybe you lost all your money, or something calamitous, right? Something traumatic with money will also, if it's not resolved in that lifetime, it will, or let's say maybe you had a lot of money and your whole family was killed when somebody was robbing it. I mean, you might be like, it is not safe. On a subconscious level, you're like, it is not safe to have money. My family will die.
Yes.
These things are really real.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really matter what happened, right? It doesn't even have to be like something physically with money happen. It just has to be associated to it.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Like in the religious example, right? The vow of poverty. So when you're going through the healing here, you really want to look at trauma, because trauma, I mean, this is such a big discussion, but trauma is going to negatively impact your sense of safety in the world and your root chakra. And your root chakra is safety, money, security, all of that. So if your root chakra is still compromised by unresolved trauma, you will have a hard time. You'll be on one or the other side. Some people, a smaller percentage of people, amass security. So there are some people who are hoarders, and hoarders may be hoarding money, or it may be hoarding possessions. And they are trying to create safety through the accumulation of wealth. But what happens more frequently than that is that people just avoid it altogether. They don't know how to get it. They don't feel deserving of it. They don't know how to attract it. They are in a bleak mindset where they won't be able to, where scarcity is really the overriding thing of, I just don't have enough. And we're fed it too. So I want to say that, like, the media feeds this narrative, right? Because we're fed stories all the time about how hard it is out there.
Yeah.
How hard it is. Like, how much you have to struggle.
And there's only one way. You can only be employed, and pray to the gods that somebody will employ you.
Yeah. That's and you have to,
right?
Turn away. And, yeah, exactly. Exactly. And so these beliefs are reinforced by what we experience. And we have to really, I mean, there's something here too, breaking out of that matrix, because it is a matrix. It's a field of information that people are indoctrinated into. And you have to, I mean, my dear friend and colleague, Ina Lucas, she does a lot of unschooling work, and she teaches homeschooling. One thing that she does, and Ina, but unschooling also in spirituality and in life too, because we have to undo the programming that we've been hypnotized into through our school systems, through our networks, through the media, which is constantly feeding us messages that they want us to believe. They have an agenda. I mean, I don't want to be too conspiracy theorist here, but if you come out of it and look at it, you can see that they have an agenda. Each channel has a different agenda, and they're feeding you. The news is rarely unbiased anymore. I mean, there may be some unbiased news out there, but for the most part, in the 24-hour news cycles that we have now, there's an agenda that they want you to believe, and it aligns usually with your programming. And if it is that there's not enough and gas prices are going up and people are getting laid off and unemployment is high and this and that, then that's going to, and you have scarcity beliefs already, that's going to feed the scarcity belief in you.
Yes. And it will take probably a while to get out of it.
Yeah. It takes a lot of healing and a lot of mindset work, but it can happen. And when it does, it's a freaking miracle.
Yes. Oh my God. It's like, finally.
Yeah.
But it's
right?
also like a very, very different kind of like operating system, right? If you just follow the mainstream, you go to school and there's always this rigidity, this, everything's, a sequel, so one thing after another. There's not very interwoven things. There's no space for, or very little space for creativity, for impulse, for like a hinge of this or that, or something new coming in and then making something out of it. And well, yeah, you're pushing everything away. So.
Yeah. So this is really, I mean, one of the primary thing I'm doing now with my life is that I run a Healers Academy with Ina, who I just mentioned, Kairos Healers Academy. And Kairos Healers Academy is an unschooling in so many ways, because our primary focus in that is there's no like one modality that you learn or one way of doing things. It's about you tapping into your own unique magic and how you bring that into the world. So we teach healing and intuitive development. We teach business development. It's really like a trade school, but we teach it all through the lens of what is your magic, right? Not what did your parents tell you? Not what did your school teacher tell you? Not what does your husband tell you? What your best friend is telling you? What is alive inside of you that wants to come through? Because that, your magic, is the medicine that the world needs from you. And so it is a complete unschooling, and it is a complete rewiring and a complete healing, because we have to learn that our unique magic and the voice and the expression that we have around that is our power. But in this field, we've typically, and there's so much witch wounding that's been ancestrally handed down the lineages, and also past life wounding in that same area, that makes it really hard. I'm so grateful for people like you who are doing interviews with people like me and bringing this more to the forefront, because we need these healing gifts now out in the world, but there's a lot of social stigma attached to them, and it can be hard as a healer to break through that. And so our school is about connecting into your North Star, your unique magic, and healing the wounds that are keeping you from expressing it in the world.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I can give you an example of somebody here, like close to me. So, like living in the area, that was doing like intuitive work, emotional work, and and not a psychologist, right? Because people kind of said psychologist. And so she was doing different kinds of, a little bit of meditative, a little bit of intuitive, and this and that modality, and her thing. And people were calling her a witch.
Right. It still happens.
Yeah. And it's obviously an insult, right? This crazy woman is doing something that's not tangible, that doesn't provide any value. It's just like, taking up space that she shouldn't. And, at the end of the day, her clients had great results. Like, like it was just like other people that didn't understand this and obviously weren't also interested in that kind of inner work. And it is not tangible, so you can't explain it with this material world that we have, right? So it's obviously it doesn't work, but it's still valuable. Very much so, right?
Yes, exactly. It's still very valuable, exactly. And that, you know, that woman may identify as a witch, but if she does, it's more likely that she identifies as a witch like I do, which is not the kind of witch they're claiming she is, right?
Oh, by the way, people called me a witch too a few times, just as a joke, because I was selling herbs in front of our house.
Herbs. That's beautiful. We know that herbs can be powerful sometimes. They can be, you know what I mean? So
now I have my love for me, and I'm happy with that. So I don't need the herbs anymore. But for those that want them, they still work.
yeah, exactly. I mean, they have medicinal properties. We've been, you know, just so indoctrinated that it has to be a certain way. But really, what is? I mean, I think a lot of us are reclaiming the word witch. I am reclaiming the word witch, which feels very real and true to me. But it's not the energy of what patriarchy has vilified. When I say witch, it's the energy of a woman who is in touch with herself, who is embodied, who's done healing, who lives with the cycles of nature, is connected to nature, is connected to the nature spirits, connected to source wisdom, and who works with ritual and magic to create change in the world and in herself. And I mean, what's wrong with that? Right? Like, that's really all a witch has ever been. Was that what I just told you? But because patriarchy,
so the church had had a really busy time around.
Yeah, we're like, those women are too powerful, and we need to take control of all of it, and we want to earn some money, so we're going to kill them all and steal their belongings and their money, because they used to like charge the witches for their own hanging or burning. I mean, like. It was such a fucking racket. Excuse me.
Oh, yeah. It was everywhere.
Anyway. It was.
Anyway. We've reached the hour, Janet. Thank you so much for
thank you.
It was so much fun. And can you tell people where they can like get in touch with you and like maybe they want to work with you, like how can they do that?
Yeah, so my primary work now is through Kairos Healers Academy. Kairos is spelled Kairos. So KairosHealersAcademy.com. I can also be found through JanetRaftis.com. I'm on Instagram at JanetRaftis. You can find me in all of those places.
I will link it in the show more notes.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Awesome. Thanks, Leah. Thank you, everyone.